I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
We're talking today with Rod Chapman, Sr. of Belmont, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Right. Now, Mr. Chapman, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, to begin with. Where and when were you born?
I was born in New London, Connecticut in 1930.
All right. And what did your family do there?
My dad worked in a boat works, and then he worked in a piano factory. And then during the war, starting the war, he worked at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft. And in '43, my uncle was a risk engineer for Travelers Insurance out here. So he asked us to come out, and he said, I'll get you a job. So my dad got at R.C. Allen, and my mother went to American Seating. And later on, my mother went to R.C. Allen.
All right. And what did R.C. Allen do?
They made adding machines, calculators, and then later on, typewriters. I ended up working there and started in '48.
Okay. Now, do you remember much about the World War II period? I mean, you were a kid then.
Oh, I knew. I had two cousins. One was in POW camp in Japan for 18 months with General Wainwright.
Wow.
And his brother was a lieutenant when Pearl Harbor was bombed. He was at Hickam Field. And so I knew quite a bit, what was going on with the Second World War.
Right.
And when I lived in Connecticut, I had a few friends that fought in the Second War during the Germans, And then one of them was in POW camp. But with my two cousins, I knew quite a bit what was going on.
Now, did you assume that the war was going to finish before you got into it? Or were
Oh,
you
I
not
was still
sure?
in high school,
Yeah.
It's one of those things. You figured it was going along pretty good, But I wasn't worried too much. If I had to go, I was going to go.
Right. Okay. Now, did you finish high school?
No, I went to 11th grade.
Okay. And then when you left high school, then what did you do?
I worked in Blythefield Country Club from March of '48 to August of '48, and then I went to R.C. Allen. And I worked at R.C. Allen until I was drafted in '51.
All right. Now, when the Korean War broke out in 1950, did you figure that they'd probably catch up with you, or were you maybe not thinking that much about it to start with?
I didn't think too much about it, but they had a draft on, and a lot of friends of mine were older than I am that were getting drafted, so I figured I was going to get in there.
All right. And then when did you get drafted?
I got drafted on July 11th, '51.
Okay. Now, once you were drafted, where did you go to report?
Well, I went to Detroit first, and we took a bus to Fort Sheridan. Then at Fort Sheridan, we got our uniforms and got that nice haircut. And from there, we took a train to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri I had 8 weeks infantry training and 8 weeks engineer training.
All right. Can you describe a little bit the training, the basic training you had at Leonard Wood? What were you doing there?
Well, the infantry basically were on a firing range, and we had a lot of marches, and we had we went through a PRI, infantry with machine guns firing over your head, and and you got in holes, and they had dynamite going off in holes, around you, and you had to crawl under barbed wire, And it was hot down there during the summertime,
All right. Now, what sort of people did they have training you? Were the drill sergeants a
Well,
lot older?
a lot of them were Second World War vets, Then there was some that went in the Army and they were going to go to OCS, so they were cadre too,
Right. And what kind of people were training alongside you? Were they from all over the country at
All
that point?
over, yeah, and I met a lot of nice guys, you know, had a lot of nice friends, and there was a lot of guys right from here, Grand Rapids, you know, that I was in my company. You know, another company that got drafted the day before, I knew some of those guys, so, you know, that 16 weeks down there went pretty fast, and we had a lot of friends, you know.
Now, how much emphasis did they place on learning Army discipline and that sort of thing?
Oh, it was a lot of, oh yeah, we close combat and night deals, you know, we went out at night, you know, and bivouac, you know, and a lot of rain, and later on snow, you know.
Did they spend a lot of time trying to teach you to do things like follow orders?
Oh yeah.
And learn all of that. And how well did you adjust to that?
That didn't bother me a bit. I learned a lot from these guys that were over in fighting the Japanese, you know. And some of the smaller guys, they helped a little bit more than they did the bigger ones, you know. I had one sergeant who really worked with me, and a couple other guys. And when I was leaving Korea, he came in my company. You know, and he had gone to Germany for a year, and then he was transferred to Korea.
And so now were you both sergeants at that point?
No, I didn't make sergeant until I was getting ready to leave.
Okay.
And I didn't want it, you know. Corporal was bad enough, you know. And when I got down to Incheon, when I was leaving Korea, I run into a lieutenant that was up on Triangle that I didn't know he was a lieutenant. I started yelling at him and swearing at him because he kept putting his head up behind rocks and machine guns were going off, you know, and he wouldn't listen, you know. And finally, I threw a grenade in a cave and cut it out, and I got over there and I started swearing at him. He turned around and he was seen his bars, and I said, "Sir," and he little laughed. I said, "You could get your head blown off." You know, he said, "Well, I'm over here from the 31st Regiment, you know, and all your officers have been hit, so I'm over here to take over." I said, "You're not going to take over very good if you get your head blown off."
I'd say he'd probably remember that.
It did. When I run into him at Incheon, we got rotated at the same time, and that's when he pushed the Purple Heart and a Bronze Star on me because I got hit the first morning, but I only had small shrapnel on my knee, which didn't bother me. It didn't pull me off the hill or anything, you know.
Okay, let's back ourselves back up, back to Leonard Wood when you're there in training. So basically you've got your first 8 weeks, kind of the standard infantry basic, you follow orders, you do basic combat training and so forth. And then you said you did 8 weeks of engineer training.
Yeah.
Now what did that consist of?
Building bridges, roads, and the last week we were there, we were trying to build an airstrip, but we had so much snow and everything, they finally pulled us off. But we learned how to set landmines too, when engineers, yeah.
All right. Now once you completed your training there at Leonard Wood, what was the next thing that you did?
I came home for 30 days. Then we had to go to Chicago and got on a train to Fort Lawton in Washington. And then from there we got on a ship for 17 days to Yokohama, Japan.
Okay. Now what kind of ship were you sailing on?
The first one was a Marine Phoenix. It was a Marine ship, one stacker, you know, and we had 3 storms going over.
All right. Now, had you ever been out to sea before?
No, not like that, no.
Okay. And what was it like to be on a ship like that in the middle of a storm?
Crowded, because you couldn't go on deck, you know. You're all down, when you went to chow, you was going down through a narrow place and it was hot, you know, and the latrines were really bad, you know, for 3 days.
Now, did you get seasick in the middle of all that?
You know what? I didn't get seasick until we were sitting in Yokohama Bay New Year's Eve. And we were sitting there and the water's like this, and I got sick.
Oh, so maybe the rest of the time you were too scared to get sick.
Yeah, we were going down to mess hall, we carried our helmets with us, you know.
Just in case. Oh. All right, so you get to Yokohama. Now, do you get to get off the ship at Yokohama, or do you
Well, we
just
got
stay there?
off and got on a train and went to Camp Drake,
Okay.
and we were there about 3 days. So.
All right. Now, at this point, were you assigned to a unit yet, or were you just a
No,
replacement?
we were in Camp Drake and there a couple of days, and finally took a bunch of us, put us on a train, and we went south. And I ended up at Edajima, Japanese Naval Academy.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going to cook school for 8 weeks.
Okay. Now, what was that like?
That was great. I learned how to repair and set the stoves that they use in Korea, you know, for a cook, you know, and knew just how much air to put in them so you got a blue flame instead of a yellow one, you know. I really worked hard on this deal, you know.
Now, with the stoves, did they use propane or
No,
just
gas. So the
Gasoline.
gas stoves are only so big, you know. And I learned a lot. And after the 8 weeks there, I was shipped to Korea in Busan.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for one day. They put us on a train up to Cap Young, and we got on trucks to different outfits. I went to the 32nd.
Okay. That's the 32nd Infantry Regiment,
Yeah.
part of the 7th Division.
And I ended up with King Company,
Okay.
but I ended up as a rifleman, not a cook.
Mm-hmm.
My MOS still shows a cook MOS,
Mm-hmm.
because all of a sudden they needed 3 men, and I got volunteered.
Right. Okay. Now, at the time you joined your company, were they up on the line, or were they?
They're on Heartbreak Ridge.
All right.
They've been there for a while. I ended up only being there for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went in reserve and got replacements and everything, but I was still ended up being a rifleman.
Right. Okay. Now, when you get there, how did they actually get you up to join your company? I mean, you go up, you got trained to a certain point, and then what after that?
Truck.
Okay.
You know, got put on trucks from Cap Young north to wherever you was going.
Right.
You know, from Cap Young, they branched off to different places.
And then, were you able to get off the truck very, very close to where the lines were, or did you have to walk a ways?
Well, we got off and then we had to walk up to the old man CP, you know, and he gave us a talk, you know, and then we were assigned to bunkers up there.
So what did they tell you when you got there? Were they advising you on what to do or not to do, or what's going on around you?
Oh yeah, they assign us to guys that have been there for a while, you know, and they fill you in. I ended up with a Corporal Leroy Little from New York, and he was a color guy, and he really helped me out a lot. I was with him until he got hit on patrol one night.
Okay. Now, at this point, then, the Army is integrated, at least to some extent. There are now black soldiers in some of the line units and mixed together. And when you got there, as far as you could tell, were the soldiers basically getting along with each other?
Oh yeah, well, we got along in basic training. You know, we had one color guy from Grand Rapids that took basic with us, and then I didn't see him again. You know, but we had a colored lieutenant, and he was a good guy. Yeah, and we had 2 colored sergeants, and then Leroy was a corporal, and we got along with all of them. Yeah. Those guys would back you up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where when Truman integrated the military, a lot of people were saying, oh, that couldn't possibly work. And there were going to be racial issues at times in some places and for a long time to come. But one of the things that seems to have happened in Korea was, and repeated itself in Vietnam, was that usually if you were under fire, you usually forgot about most of that stuff.
Yeah.
And anyway, so you get up there. Now, was there much going on Heartbreak Ridge when you got there, or was it quiet?
No, it was quiet. I think later on, after we come off, one of the guys that's in the Korean War Association with me, he was up there after. He got wounded up there. He got the Silver Star.
Right.
But, you know, after we come off, we went, I think, 3 weeks of reserve, you know, so we got replacements and we did some training. Then we went up on Henry. Henry was the one I I remember pretty good because I was across from what they call Old Papasan 1062. They said there's more Japanese over there than that was their ammo dump.
The Japanese or Chinese?
Chinese.
Chinese.
But the Japanese had this hill was a hospital underneath
Mm-hmm.
when the Japanese were over there,
Mm-hmm.
and the Chinese had an ammo dump. Yeah.
Right.
We were there 6 weeks. And,
Okay. Now, what would go on, sort of, if you're up there on the line there in a typical day? What kinds of things would happen, or what would your day be like?
just sitting there watching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had a good size. We had 3 men in a bunker, you know, and you pull your guard, you know, during the day and everything. And at night, Leroy told me, he says, you don't just pull 2 hours. If you can pull longer, stay, you know, as long as you don't go to sleep or anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and wake the next guy up to pull his guard, you know. So usually you don't stand there 2 hours. 2 hours is not really. I mean, 2 hours is a lot when you're staring, really, you know, all
Mm-hmm.
in the dark, you know, listening, you know, and yeah.
Now, did you have anything out in front of your position that either to make noise or alert you to people
We
coming
had
in?
barbed wire out, and we had cans tied to the barbed wire, and you did a lot of listening at night, you know, and during the daytime you could see quite a
Right.
ways, you know, but at night your hand in front of your face, you know.
Now, during that time when you were up on Henry, I mean, did the Chinese make any attempts to get up to where you were?
No, 6 weeks we were up there. We pulled a couple patrols out there, but never run into anything, you know.
Okay. And did you go on any of those patrols?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And what would happen on that patrol? What would you be doing?
Well, usually maybe about 7 guys would go out, you know, and a radio man.
Mhm.
Okay? And usually somebody that's been there for a while, they do the leading, you know, and you might go 70, 80 yards, 100 yards or so, and then if nothing happens or anything, you'll come back, you know.
So you were basically out there to check to see if any of the
Yeah,
Chinese were
check
kind of
if
trying to
any-
come in your
yeah,
direction.
Any penetration, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what was the landscape like in that area? What did it
Oh,
look like?
Hills.
Hmm.
That's all you did is Chogi Hills over there. Oh yeah, a lot of hills. I think.
No.
That's why the tank was a bad. They ended up having to be on the road, you know,
Hmm.
and they could knock them out easier because the first cab really got it over there before I got over there.
Hmm.
Yeah, but then we had a lot of camouflage over the roads in certain areas, so they couldn't see it with artillery and mortar, you know.
Mhm. Okay. Now, did you see much by way of aircraft overhead or anything
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. We had jets over there all the time. Besides observation planes, you know,
that? Hmm.
go out around, you know, and
Right.
take pictures and you know terrain and everything, you know.
Now, did you see any enemy aircraft?
No, I didn't see it. Well, I did seen one of those drop leaflets. That's the only one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All
Other
right.
than that, I didn't see any.
Okay. Now, after that, I guess you'd mentioned that in between these first two places where you're based, you were back in the rear area taking replacements and so forth. Do you have any sense of how large your company was when you joined it? And how many men were there when you pulled off the line?
I don't know how many men. I think we had 162 in our company. There's 165.
Hmm.
But you know, all the companies at that time that I know of were full, you know,
Okay.
until when we got on Triangle, you know.
Okay. So when you joined it, you were only just a few guys joining and that kind of thing. Not a whole lot of losses recently. Okay. Now, when you were back behind the lines, did you see anything of Koreans, either soldiers or civilians?
No, a couple times when I was in blocking position, I didn't have anything doing. I got permission to go back,
Hmm.
and I run into 3 guys that lived here in Grand Rapids. 2 of them I took basic with,
Hmm.
and I took a day and went down and talked to them. And then one of the guys I went to cook school with, 2 of us took off one day and went over to see him,
Hmm.
and he ended up being in the kitchen. with the 17th Regiment, you know. I said, you really got it made.
Right. Okay. Now, after the time up at Henry, I mean, what did you pull off the line again? And
Yeah, we pulled off and we were in what they call blocking position.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you pull a lot of patrols, day and night patrols.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we relieved another company up on another hill, and you might be there for a month or so. Then you get replaced, and then you go in reserve for a while. And when it got towards the end of September, it's getting time for rotation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when they held us all back, and he pulled a couple patrols up around Triangle trying to pick up some prisoners, you know, see what they had up there, you know. The one patrol they went out, they picked up 2. When we went out, we got hit by a mortar and lost 3 men out there, and only 1 was killed, but 2 were wounded.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went up on Triangle, Leroy, he got hit, and I ended up with 4 men. And I went to the old man and asked him for replacements. He says, too late for replacements. There's 4 of us, and you're in charge at corporal. I said, no. But it was too late to get replacements, you know, because we were jumping off at 5 o'clock on October 14th. You know.
Okay. Now, before we kind of get into that part, you'd said that in September it had gotten time for rotation.
Yeah.
Is that just rotation of units moving in
Yeah.
different places?
No,
or
replaced
soldiers
going home.
Okay. So you had men from your company who had finished their time who went out?
Yeah, we had quite a few men that should have rotated. You know. You got 4 points a month when you was up there, you know.
Now, did the people who were scheduled to rotate out in September, did they get to go or did they have to stay?
No, we all stayed,
Okay.
and we lost a lot of them.
All right. Now, describe a little bit the situation up on Triangle when you get there. What was the physical layout, first of all?
They spread out. Our company was on Pikes Peak. You know, one of the other companies was on Jane Russell, another one on Sandy Ridge, and that's the way you went up. And they had a lot of bunkers up there, but a lot of caves. You know, I never did find out what those caves were, you know, before the Korean War even happened, you know.
Now, were these caves that the enemy was occupying?
Yeah, they occupied. They had machine guns set up, and sometimes they had 10, 12 in a cave, you know. But that's what they sat there and fired with, and then we got hit by a lot of artillery and mortar fire. When I got hit, I yelled for my medic, and Smitty come over and helped us out, and he told me I should go back. I wasn't going back because I just had a scratch, you know. So I went back up, and that's when I run into the lieutenant that wouldn't keep his head down.
Right.
And then he jumped me, and he told me, there's a couple of litter bearers over there, and he said, why don't you go with them, guard their back, you know, as they're going up. He says, I'm giving you an order because I'm in charge now, you know. So I did that for 3 days, and finally I did go back to aid station and got my knee taped up a little bit, and I went back up again.
Okay. Now, during this time, were you basically holding a defensive position and the Chinese were attacking?
We were moving towards the top.
Okay, so you were trying to attack and actually
Yeah,
capture this.
We were up there to take the hill, and that's what I said. It took 14 days, and we got the hill, and then we got relieved. Then I heard after I left, I heard that the South Koreans lost it one day, and the 7th Division had to go back again.
All right. Now, can you describe when you were attacking? Were you attacking during the day or at night?
Oh, we jumped off at 5 in the morning.
Okay.
And it went on for 14 days that night. Night and day it was going on.
Okay. Now, would they try to counterattack you when you?
Oh yeah, after we got on top there, and they blew bugles. You know, it's something the guys in Seattle told me about that came back. I didn't believe them until, you know, they blew bugles attack, and then we goes do them again to reassemble, then they come back up again. They had one bazooka carrier. If his ammo bearer hadn't bugged out, he would have made it all the way to the top. Nobody could hit that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Now, did they have a lot of artillery support, mortar
Yeah.
fire?
Oh yeah. Down below, we had mortar fire,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you would have a observer with you, bringing in the artillery.
Mm-hmm. And were you able to call in air support too?
No, we didn't. Later on they had it on the back side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had air support on the back side.
All right. Now, did the Chinese have much in the way of artillery? Were they bombarding?
Oh
you?
yeah, oh yeah, they had good artillery. It's when the first Cav really got it with artillery and got all their tanks knocked out over there. Yeah.
All right. Now, you said you were there. We had 4 other men with you, and you're up there. Now, did those men get hit too? Or?
Yeah, we all one round, artillery round.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was killed. One of them had a shoulder wound, another one was belly wound.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Smitty take care of him first, and I helped him. You know, we got him on a litter and get him out of there. And the one in the shoulder, I put his arm in a sling, you know, and took his shirt, and I told him to hold on to one of the litter bearers and go back down the hill. And Smitty took care of the one that was killed there, you know, with his dog tags.
Right. Yeah. Now, if you were going to try to get a wounded man back on a litter, I mean, how far would you have to go, or how long would you be under fire when you were doing that?
Oh, when we started out, we were only starting up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have too far to get to the half tracks and
Right.
trucks, you know, and then some of them that were worse than other ones, they had a helicopter set back, you know, where they could put 2 on a helicopter and get them out of there.
But you still
But
had
when
to
you
get
got
'em-
farther up the hill, it was longer to get
Right.
back down again, you
Right.
know. The farther up the hill you was, yeah.
Now, so were you kind of just sleeping out there wherever you could
Oh,
out on
yeah.
the ground
Yeah,
during that time?
You could show you wasn't getting anything to eat
Mm-hmm.
because they couldn't get anything up to you, you know. And the kitchen back there tried to get sea rations, but we were scattered so bad all over the hill they couldn't get anything down.
Okay. Well, you were up there for 2 weeks. Okay. Now, you must have gotten some food in there at some
Oh,
point.
we had our sea rations, sometimes we carried a pack of the K rations.
Yeah, so you had some food
Oh,
with
yeah.
you. And what would you do for water?
We always had a full canteen. You didn't drink that much out of the canteen, just wet your lips and stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then what was the weather like when you were doing this
Oh,
fighting?
it was cool. It was starting to get cold in October.
Mm-hmm.
It was cold over there.
Yeah. Now, was it raining
We
at
had
all?
snow in November before we left. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, rainy season, that was the spring of the year, and they had a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
No shaving, no showers. You know, they would take us back certain times to take showers, but there was no showers, no shaving. That was a rough part.
Right. Okay. So you've got sort of you'd been there for a certain amount of time, a few months, and not too bad a situation, and then you get into this sort of larger scale attack and under fire for this amount of time.
Yeah.
What kind of shape were you in by the time you got off the hill?
I was in bad shape.
Okay. So you
And
were-
our training kept us in shape, you know.
Mhm.
And we could choggy those hills with no problem. I couldn't do it now, but
Yeah.
you know, I didn't have any problem getting up those hills.
did you have
Especially carrying ammo and everything, you know.
Did you have any problems there from just not getting enough sleep or food or things like that, or you were kind of ready to
You
go?
know,
again?
you're young, you know. Sleep don't, you know. I mean, just like when we're in those bunkers, you know, we were sitting on the floor, sleeping that way, you know. And the next guy put, you know. But that's the way you slept in those bunkers, you're sitting up, you know.
All right. Now, once you got off of Triangle Hill, you're going to go back. Then, does your unit go into reserve for a while, or what
Yeah,
happens?
well, our company only ended up with 65 men left, you know. not all killed, but
Right.
you know.
Right.
And then we got all these replacements,
Mm-hmm.
and we were told to get on a truck to go back to the service company for a physical. We're going home, so. And all these replacements, I ended up with one of the sergeants that I had basic training with
Mm-hmm.
came with my company, you know. But we went down and got our physicals, and then the next morning they got us up and we had some chow and put us on a truck. We went all the way to Cap Young. Then we got on a train to Incheon,
Mm-hmm.
and from there to Japan, and on a boat and back. It only took us 15 days this time.
Mm-hmm.
First time going over, we were in a boat on Christmas. We were at Thanksgiving going home this time.
Mm-hmm. And what do they do for Thanksgiving when you're on a boat out in the
Yeah,
Pacific?
turkey.
All right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You had all the trimmers. Those guys that run those were Marines. You know, they're what they call Marine ships. They volunteer in Seattle to go to Japan. They don't have to sign a contract to go back. They could stay, you know. And those guys, when they get 6 miles out, they cut the knots down because they're getting hazard duty pay.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get close to Japan, they really work, get that ship painted and cleaned all up so they can get off.
Mm-hmm.
They do the same thing going the other way. They're getting hazard duty pay, and then the last couple of days, they really put the knots up there so they can get off in Seattle, you know.
Mm-hmm. So they stretch out the trip because they can,
Oh,
in the
yeah.
middle of it, because it benefits them career-wise or whatever, and then
Yeah.
just hurry up and get done. Okay. Now, then they land you in Seattle. So when do you get back to the States then? Was that
15 days.
okay? So kind of December of 52 at that point?
Yeah, I think we landed back in Seattle at the 10th of December.
Okay. And then from there, what did you do?
We were in Seattle just overnight,
Mm-hmm.
and put us on a bus to the airstrip, you know, and we see these big jets out there. Boy, we start walking in. That's not yours. We walk over to Capital Airline, two-motor job,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we took to Seattle or to Battle Creek. We had to land 3 times. We had one engine on fire,
Ouch.
so we landed 3 times. We got in Battle Creek, I think, at 3 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Then we took us over for chow, and then they took us over for a physical, and they put us in one building. We looked at all these draftees. Boy, they had some nice clothes.
Mm-hmm.
How would you like this? And we'll trade, you know.
Yeah.
Some of those kids didn't know what to say, you know. So then I come home for 30 days, and I went back to Custard,
Mm-hmm.
and Lieutenant Headquarters Company said, I got a job for you, but he says, I can't put you in the kitchen because your records show you still got the MOS, but you can't go in as a first cook.
Mm-hmm.
So I was supply sergeant there for 2 weeks. Then he put my name on a board to go to Colorado Springs.
All right.
And I got down there and I walked in the headquarters company, and the warrant officer looked at my records and he says, I can't put you in the kitchen either. I said, yeah, I says, I still got the MOS. He says, how would you like to work in supply here? So that's what I did when I was down there.
All right. And then how long did you stay in Colorado Springs?
I stayed from January until April.
Was that when you were discharged then?
Yeah.
All right.
And I got in the discharge center. I was there for a week, and I run into 2 guys I took basic with.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a good conversation for a week before then I got on a train and to Kalamazoo and home.
All right. Now, during that last stage there, when you're back in the States, still in the service, did they make any effort to get you to re-enlist, or did they just?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah.
And what could they offer you
But
at that point?
I ended up with my supply sergeant from Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in the room, and my supply sergeant I had in Korea and a lieutenant, we were sitting there, and the sergeant knew what we went through the last couple months up there, you
Right.
know. And he said to the lieutenant, I don't think he's going to re-enlist. So we sat there for an hour, hour and a half, just shooting the bull, you know, having a good old time, you know.
So you're supposed to be having a conversation about getting you to re-enlist?
Yeah,
But you just kind of
but we didn't, you know.
didn't bother with that.
Sergeant, he knew what happened over there, and he knew what was going on, so he said, I don't think he's going to re-enlist.
Now, once you got back home then, you're discharged, what did you do next?
I didn't do anything for about a week and a half, and then I went back to work at RC Allen.
Okay. And then did you stay there for a long time?
I stayed at RC Allen, and in '54 I got married to Marge, and in '56 RC Allen went on strike, but I didn't belong to the union at the time, so I went and worked 9 weeks, 7 days a week at Calvin here, third shift, and they went back, so I went back to RC Allen. I went to Grand Rapids Junior College for a month, I think, to be a machinist, so they paid for that. And then in '60, I got laid off because the instrument division was going down for, you know, and so I got laid off. I went to General Motors, and the guy that did the hiring at General Motors chewed me out for not coming over there when I got out of service, because I worked with him at RC Allen, you know. So I put 30 years in General Motors.
All right. To look back at the whole thing now, how do you think your time in the service wound up affecting you? Did you learn from it or change at all because of it?
You learned a lot. You learned how to get along with people, you know. That was one of the big things. I got along with everybody, but, you know, when I was a kid, I played ball 7 days a week, you know, and, you know, it was nothing. And I met a lot of nice guys. Right now, I'm in contact with, well, really just one of the guys I was in Korea with. I haven't seen in 57 years, you know. But there's two more that and these guys went to Hawaii on a 15-day cruise. And one night I'm sitting there watching a ball game, phone rings, my wife answered the phone and brings it over to me. I answered it, and it was Carlos, and I was talking to him for a while, and he said, wait a minute. He gave the phone to the other guy, and he said, hey, Rod, how you doing? He says, I was your foxhole buddy. You called me from Hawaii.
Wow.
That's, you know. So I think we were trying to get together sometime, you know. There's 5 of us that I know of that were in my platoon.
And here locally, also, you're involved with the Telemerica group. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with them?
We go to schools. But, you know, you can't believe that a lot of the kids never heard about Korea. You know, when I was in school, I never read anything about Korea, you know. But these kids are really interested, you know. And after we give them a talk and everything, they come up and ask us questions, you know. And they're really into John, you know,
well,
because he was a POW. And when we were out to Allendale, they had him surrounded. But the kids are interested.
Yes, they are. And if you go directly to them and tell your own stories and so forth, it works that much better. And part of why we do these interviews is to create a way to make sure that people can continue to see you guys tell your own stories. And with that, I'd like to just thank you for coming out and taking the time to talk to me today.
You know, we were in Kellogg'sville twice, and we were at Allendale twice, you know, so they're interested.
Right.
Went to Grand Valley once. Was you out there at Grand Valley when we were there?
I organized it.
Yeah. You know, I talked to some of the ROTC guys, you know.
Right.
And one of them had already enlisted in the Army. And then they had a few Iraqis there, too.
Right. Okay.
They're interested out there, too.
Sure they are. And that's basically what a lot of what I do out there.
Yeah.
And I use these interviews directly in the classes. All right. Okay. Well, I think that will wrap it up then.
Okay, thanks.
I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. We I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.